Hey guys, wow, it's 4:17 a.m. in Washington, D.C., and the street outside your window has become a stage lit by the harsh white glare of portable floodlights. You hear the heavy stomp of boots, the bark of commands in clipped English, the mechanical clink of handcuffs, each sound bouncing off the brick walls like echoes in a drum. The air is damp, carrying the faint smell of yesterday's rain mixed with exhaust from idling vans. You see silhouettes move like shadows with purpose, each step choreographed, each motion pre-decided. And in the space of seconds, your neighborhood transforms from quiet row houses into a cordoned zone. You probably won't survive this, at least. Not the version of life you knew before this morning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments, because stories like this deserve to be mapped by more than coordinates. And let's go on the journey of today's story together. The knock isn't a knock, it's a splintering of wood and a chorus of shouts. You watch a family 2 doors down, pajamas still clinging to their bodies, stumble into the floodlight's beam. An officer gestures sharply toward the van, and they shuffle forward, clutching whatever they could grab in those first stunned seconds: an infant's blanket, a single shoe, a rosary that swings wildly in a shaking hand. From a second-story window across the street, a teenager films, his phone camera jittering as he whispers into it. They're taking everyone. I think it's like 20 people already. This video will hit social media before sunrise, the hashtag stacking up like a silent digital protest. And yet, beneath the noise and urgency, you notice something stranger. A man in a navy ice jacket, sipping from a travel mug, steam curling into the cold air, his expression blank as if he were waiting for a bus. Later, you'll learn from an ICE press briefing that coffee orders are part of raid readiness, a routine detail in an operation designed to uproot 189 people before breakfast. Official reports will call this targeted enforcement. But in this moment, as you press your palm to the cold window glass, it feels more like a page torn from a history you thought you'd never live through. The city you thought you knew, the one of monuments, cherry blossoms, and marble steps, looks different in the pre-dawn shadows. Washington, D.C. has always been a place of power, but in immigrant corridors like Columbia Heights, Mount Pleasant, and parts of Northeast, it's power of a different kind. Neighbors looking out for each other, bodegas staying open late, church doors never locked. These pockets of community hum beneath the grandeur, invisible to tourists, but vital to the city's heartbeat. For weeks, rumors whispered through these neighborhoods, carried in hushed Spanish and Amharic, that ICE was shifting its focus. Not the border, not faraway towns, but right here in the capital itself. Some dismissed it as fear-mongering. Others started keeping their children home from school, memorizing hotline numbers just in case. Then, according to official ICE statements, a 4-day joint enforcement operation was planned with local and federal partners, citing the need to remove individuals posing public safety threats. On paper, it sounded clean, contained, even necessary. In reality, it was 189 people, mothers, fathers, students, elders, gone in less than a week. The press conference the next afternoon was a study in contrasts. ICE spokespeople spoke of lawful execution of duties and upholding immigration statutes. But a ProPublica piece would later point out the striking fact that over 60% of those detained had no prior criminal record, an uncomfortable reminder that public safety often has a broader, murkier definition than most citizens realize. Odd details slipped through the official language. An NPR segment mentioned that one of the raid teams had to pause because their GPS glitched near the Capitol, leading agents to circle the same block 3 times before finding the right address. For residents, those extra loops were both a reprieve and a terror, the sound of vans passing again and again like a predator scenting its prey. Commentary spread quickly online. The Washington Post published a piece framing the operation as symbolic enforcement, sending a message not just to the people taken, but to every immigrant in the city. You are never beyond reach. And as you walk the sidewalks that evening, past shuttered shops and drawn blinds, You can feel the weight of that message lingering in the air, as thick as the city's summer humidity. Matteo's morning starts with the hum of his alarm at 5:30 a.m., the same way it has for the last 12 years. You see him in your mind, dark hair still damp from the quick shower, pulling on the navy hoodie with the logo of the bakery he delivers for. He slips into his worn sneakers, grabs the paper bag his wife packed 2 tamales, a thermos of coffee, and kisses her forehead. Outside, the street lamps are still on, their yellow glow cutting soft shapes into the fog. He doesn't know that, half a mile away, a white van is idling, exhaust curling into the air like the steam from his cup. The delivery route is muscle memory. Matteo can tell you exactly how the city smells before sunrise. The yeasty warmth of bread from his truck's cargo hold mixing with the metallic tang of damp pavement. He pulls up to the first cafe, backs into the loading bay, and that's when it happens. The door swings open with a force that rattles the frame, and 2 ICE agents step in, voices low but firm. One asks his name, the other already has his wrists in cold steel. In the statement released later, ICE will say Matteo was subject to a lawful detainer. What they won't mention is that his supposed violation was a paperwork lapse from over a decade ago, when his application for status renewal got lost in a bureaucratic shuffle. A track immigration breakdown would quietly note that cases like his, long-term residents with no criminal convictions, made up a significant share of the D.C. raid arrests. The oddest, almost surreal detail? According to a brief item buried in a Reuters update, Matteo's truck sat parked for hours in the alley with the bread still warm inside. By mid-morning, customers arriving for their daily coffee found no delivery, no explanation, just empty baskets where their croissants should have been. Some would joke on social media about the bread shortage, not realizing the reason had been cuffed and taken before sunrise. And you picture Matteo in the back of that van, thermos tipped over, coffee pooling dark on the floor, watching the city pass through barred windows, every street a familiar goodbye. The headlines the next morning are blunt. ICE arrests 189 in D.C. operation. Beneath them, the numbers unfold with the precision of an accountant's ledger, but each digit feels like a heartbeat cut short. Track immigration data lays it bare: 189 detained, 114 with no criminal record, 47 with minor nonviolent offenses, and a small fraction tied to more serious charges. The official ICE press release frames it as a successful, targeted enforcement action conducted in partnership with Homeland Security Investigations and local law enforcement. But the statistics tell a more complicated story. You sift through the details. 62 arrests in Northwest, 53 in Northeast, 48 in Southeast, and 26 scattered through suburbs like Silver Spring and Arlington. The operation lasted 4 days, but its precision suggests weeks, if not months, of planning. Each name on the list represents a web of relationships: a landlord now missing rent, a child without a parent at pickup, a coworker clocking in alone. Then there's the odd, almost absurd note tucked into the NPR coverage. One ICE team arrived at the wrong address and briefly detained a congressional staffer who happened to match the physical description of their target. According to the agent's later statement, the staffer was briefly inconvenienced and offered coffee, while the error was corrected. Social media pounced on the irony, an aid to the very institution funding ICE's budget caught in its net, if only for an hour. Commentary from The Guardian framed the raid as part of a national pattern of high-visibility enforcement in symbolic cities, pointing out that D.C., as the seat of federal power, sent a pointed message to other sanctuary-minded jurisdictions. ProPublica's follow-up analyzed court records, showing that a significant portion of those detained would face months in detention before even seeing a judge, thanks to backlog spikes over 3 million pending immigration cases nationwide. And yet, the ICE newsfeed chose a different focus entirely. A sidebar praising the efficiency of the operation, complete with a photo of agents posing beside a van at sunrise, their breath visible in the cold air. To the casual reader, it could almost pass for a sports team victory shot. To you, it looks more like a trophy wall built on absence. You stand in the middle of the conversation, hearing both sides like two competing broadcasts bleeding into each other. On one channel, ICE officials and their supporters speak with a certain clipped certainty. The law is the law. They argue that immigration statutes are clear, that enforcement is essential to public safety, and that the 189 individuals removed from Washington, D.C. were part of a broader mandate to uphold the integrity of the system. They point to statements like the one from the ICE field office director. We will continue to identify, arrest, and remove individuals who threaten the safety of our communities. On the other channel, community advocates, lawyers, and even some city officials push back. They hold up stories like Matteo's, pointing out that the majority detained had no violent criminal record, that many had deep roots in U.S. citizen family members. The ACLU calls it an indiscriminate sweep dressed in the language of precision. They argue that raids like this fracture trust, making immigrant communities less likely to report crimes or cooperate with police, thereby undermining the very public safety ICE claims to protect. An odd, almost comedic note emerges from a Wired article. Apparently, one team's radios malfunctioned in the middle of an operation, forcing them to communicate using hand gestures and improvised signs, an image that undercuts the rigid, hyper-professional image ICE prefers to project. On social media, a local artist turns that moment into a cartoon strip, depicting agents miming exaggerated gestures while confused residents watch from windows. It goes viral in the neighborhood before the week is out. Still, the debate cuts deeper than memes. A Washington Post opinion piece frames the issue starkly. In a city where the laws are made, how much room should there be for mercy? ProPublica's reporting adds another layer, noting that in over 40% of the D.C. raid cases, judges later granted relief from deportation, meaning the enforcement had uprooted lives, only to have the legal system deem the removals unjustified. You can't help but feel the tension pulling at you. The clean, hard edges of legal authority on one side, the messy human pleas for compassion on the other. And in that space between them, you sense the unspoken truth. Laws may be written in ink, but they're enforced in lives. The days after the raid feel like the city has a hole in it, silent absences that only those who live here can see. You walk past the corner store where the owner's son used to unload crates of fruit every morning. Now the shutters stayed down, the metal ridges gathering dust. In the schoolyard, a teacher reads out attendance and pauses over certain names, her voice catching slightly before she moves on. A bus route that was always crowded during rush hour now has empty rows, the plastic seats reflecting the dull gray light of winter afternoons. The numbers ripple beyond the neighborhood. Local markets report a sudden drop in supply of prepared foods because small bakeries, grocery stalls, and catering kitchens, many run by immigrants, are short-staffed or shuttered entirely. The Washington City paper runs a piece noting that at least a dozen restaurants have cut hours or menus. One Ethiopian cafe in Adams Morgan posts a handwritten sign, "Closed until we find our family again." Customers stop to photograph it, some wiping their eyes. A surprising detail surfaces in an ICE.gov community impact blog. Agents, anticipating criticism, highlight the recovery of 3 illegal firearms during the operation, though the report quietly notes they were found in a single, unrelated traffic stop. The framing suggests a broader crime-fighting success, but the actual connection to the 189 detained is tenuous at best. Meanwhile, local commentary heats up. On WLWT's online newsfeed, an op-ed from a D.C. council member calls the raids a blunt instrument in a city that needs surgical care. They propose that true safety comes from stability kids in school, families housed, pummeled, wages earned not from unpredictable, fear-based sweeps. The post is shared thousands of times, debated fiercely in comment threads that mix sympathy with suspicion. By the end of the week, you notice the physical toll on the community. Food bank lines longer than usual, church pews filled on nights that aren't Sunday, neighbors speaking in shorter sentences as if every word might be overheard. You realize the raid wasn't just an event, it was a break in the city's rhythm, and every skip beat echoes. You find yourself walking past the Capitol one evening, its white dome glowing against the deep blue of the winter sky. Tourists snap photos, unaware that just a few miles away, entire apartment buildings have grown quieter, their hallways empty of the familiar laughter and smells of cooking. You think about how the nation's ideals, freedom, justice, opportunity, are etched into the stone here, while in the neighborhoods beyond, those same ideals feel more like fading promises. It's not the first time you've seen this contradiction. You remember the stories your grandfather told of the 1980s, when ICE didn't exist yet, but immigration raids still left families fractured. He used to say, "A city can't preach liberty while locking its doors to the people who built it." Those words echo louder now. An unexpected tidbit you catch on NPR almost makes you pause in disbelief. During the D.C. raids, one enforcement team reportedly stopped at a food truck for breakfast tacos between arrests. The vendor later posted about it on Facebook, noting the irony of feeding the very people dismantling his customer base. The post drew hundreds of comments, some supportive, others angry, but all underscoring how surreal the collision of everyday life and state power can be. On the Independent's U.S. Politics page, a columnist frames the events as a test of Washington's conscience. If the Capitol itself can accept this level of disruption without pause, what hope is there for towns with fewer cameras, fewer reporters, fewer witnesses? ProPublica's latest update adds weight to that thought, revealing that several detainees from the D.C. raid were moved to facilities over 800 miles away, making family visits nearly impossible. And as you stand there, you realize you're part of this equation. Bearing witness isn't passive, it's a choice. Whether you tell the story at your dinner table, share it on social media, or simply refuse to look away when others do, you carry a piece of the truth forward. You wonder if that's enough. You wonder if it has to be. The chill in the air tonight feels heavier, like it's carrying more than just winter. You walk past a mural on 14th Street, bright colors of sunflowers, clasped hands, and the words "Somos más fuertes juntos," we are stronger together. It strikes you that the mural hasn't changed, but the people who used to pass it every day have. Some are hundreds of miles away now, in detention centers with no windows to the outside, their voices reduced to monitored phone calls that cost more than a day's wages. In your pocket, your phone buzzes with a neighborhood group message. Someone shares a list of resources, pro bono attorneys, translation hotlines, community food shares. Another message urges everyone to write to their council member to attend the Saturday vigil at Freedom Plaza. The call is simple: show up, be seen, be counted. An unusual note surfaces in a Reuters Wire update. You almost miss it. ICE officials confirmed that in the aftermath of the D.C. operation, several of the vans used were reassigned to high-priority cases in other states, citing operational efficiency. It's a small logistical detail, but it makes you think about how even the tools of enforcement move on quickly, while the people left behind take months or years to rebuild. Online, the debate still rages. On NY Post's U.S. News page, a commentary frames the raids as a necessary reminder that borders matter, warning that soft policies invite chaos. In contrast, a Migration Policy Institute brief outlines the long-term economic costs of removing integrated community members' losses in local tax revenue, small business closures, increased demand on social services. Both perspectives speak to power, but only one speaks to the human cost you've witnessed. And so you decide. Your silence would be the easiest choice, but the mural's message lingers in your mind. You draft a post, not polished, not perfect, but raw and real, telling what you saw that morning when the vans came. You hit share, knowing that somewhere out there, someone else will read it and realize they're not alone in this fight. The pacing slows now, and you let the city's night sounds seep in the distant wail of a siren, the soft shuffle of feet on the sidewalk, the hum of traffic across the bridge. You picture the 189 faces as threads woven into the city's fabric, and you know some threads have been pulled out for good. Yet the weave holds. It always does if enough hands reach in to mend it. You breathe deep, the cold air steady in your lungs, and feel the quiet resolve settle in your chest. Tomorrow will come, with its headlines and politics, its noise and distractions. But for now, you keep walking, letting the mural fade behind you, carrying its message forward in the only way you can, step by step, voice by voice. And in the stillness between each footfall, you find a kind of hope that even displacement can't erase.